Hello, I'm Daniel Simpson and I am the author of The Truth of Yoga, which is subtitled A Comprehensive Guide to Yoga's History, Texts, Philosophy and Practices. And that's what it is. and this course will be a distilled version. It's not a thick book, but if we were to try and cover it all, it would take a lot longer than we have. What I am trying to do in this course is to present, really an accompaniment to the book. So that means, skirting through some of its ideas and inevitably just scratching the surface, but at the same time trying to draw things together to try and explain, in very clear terms as far as I can, a few key things about the evolution of yoga. And that's the first thing I think we have to bear in mind. Yoga has changed many, many times. It's changed from a practice of seated meditation into all the many things it's become. It's changed in terms of the philosophy that it's been associated with. It's changed in terms of its relationship to the body. Originally the body was something to transcend. It's become something to cultivate, and all these things count as yoga. So how do we trace some sort of continuity through all of this process? That's what my book seeks to do, to try and highlight the ways that all these differences do have commonalities, and then really to invite us to see how we relate to it all. Because in the end, there's a lot of questions asked these days about what's authentic, what's yoga, what isn't yoga, what's an appropriate way of engaging with tradition if it's from a culture that isn't the one you grew up in. And I think the best answer to these questions is to look at what the tradition itself has to say. So in the book there's quotations from all the main yoga texts, and an attempt to explain what they say in short digestible articles, effectively each chapter really just a few hundred words. And it's covering 4 phases, and we'll look in the 4 modules of the course at those 4 phases. The earliest history of yoga, the sort of foundations of what yoga becomes, period in which there's a sort of synthesis of all of this understanding of what it is to practice yoga and what the outcome of that practice is in very famous texts such as the Yoga Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita, and then also to question whether the ways in which those texts are presented today is really in keeping with the context in which they arose and the message they were actually giving in their own time. So trying to distinguish the two things to help us in a way to understand how we relate to the past and how we might, through what we do today, preserve some connection into the future. But that doesn't mean pretending that things from the past say what we would like them to have said so that they sound more appealing in the 21st century. It means engaging with what they do say and understanding how that differs perhaps from our priorities. And then so in the 3rd module we look at sort of how yoga evolved into a more physical practice through the influence of tantric philosophy, and finally looking at the weird and wonderful world of modern yoga, in which the sort of pace of experimentation and cross-pollination has increased and led to all manner of things today being called yoga. At the same time, we can go back into the past, and really the same thing's been going on all the way through the history of yoga. So the aim of the course is to sort of tell that story and to provide some suggestions for things that we might consider, reflect upon, take on board, if we're to develop a deeper relationship with the traditions that have brought yoga to us in the modern era. So I hope you'll join me for it. I look forward to trying to bring some of these things to life and to sharing them together. So yeah, thank you very much. Hope to see you there.